Simeon Brown's office all the way up to St Kitts. They've got yellow lines, something we've been trying for about 5 or 6 years, and it is one of the busiest roads. In fact, it's almost like a highway, so that's a really positive thing. One of the things that I've been thinking about, with the global warming and everything, we have with the rail tracks, we have a lot of them, because of their heat, they're warping, and I can see into the future we're going to have more of this happening, and I can, rail is a good thing, but I can see into the future, if we're going to have the hotter temperatures that we seem to be having, we're going to have a lot more of this happening. I was over in Melbourne in early January, and twice on the rail, getting public transport, we had to get out of the train, and so it just wasn't working. So have you thought that through?
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to speed restrictions that are heat related, every year you have the standard heat season. That doesn't change, it doesn't go away. And so that's standard. So where these restrictions are applied is when you reach a certain temperature, of course, but they're only on pieces of the network that are awaiting maintenance, particularly where there's potentially maintenance is needed in a certain section, or there's been recent maintenance. So it may be that there's been recent rail replaced. So of course with heat there comes expansion in terms of that. So they go through a process where they de-stress the network. That means you get out there and you saw off a piece of track and you stick it back together in simple terms. And so if that hasn't been done, you get more of them if there's recent rail replacements, or there's a lot of vulnerabilities where they've had to apply it, because obviously the heat will accentuate any vulnerabilities. And so this all goes back to your asset management strategy. I mean, in some countries across the world where there is extreme heat all the time, they have obviously cooling technology and the likes, but locally it can be managed with your maintenance regime. Yeah.
Okay, just lastly, I'd like to, as Councillor Williamson has just invited Richard, and I'd like Richard and Dean, if you could come out and have a look at a few of our little issues out there, and you'll have a bit better understanding, and I think that would be a way forward. Thank you.
Oh, lots of personal invites today. Nice to be wanted, isn't it? So if you wouldn't mind now, Dean, and you and the team can thank you for your presentation, and councillors for your questioning today, robust and to the point, with some relevant issues raised, and a fairly comprehensive report when it's all said and done. Now, we have the recommendations there, which are really just to receive the update, and on Councillor Fletcher's request a formal recognition of Wayne Donnelly, which I think Councillor Fletcher would like to speak to. Mayor Brown would like to use the opportunity just to quickly update people about the news that's come through. His preference is that he just makes that and we don't have a big round of debates. There'll be plenty of time to follow that up later, but we certainly don't want to get into a situation where we're debating this announcement, because that's not the purpose of his response. There's going to be plenty of time for that later. So, Councillor Fletcher, you're the first speaker.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to move the recommendations, but in doing so, can I thank the staff of Auckland Transport for their presentation today, and particularly can I acknowledge to Dean the wisdom in the appointment of Mark Lambert as the Time of Use Executive Program Manager. I was very saddened to see Mark leave Auckland Transport. He had so much experience, and I was worried that that would be lost. So the time of use, some of you will know, is really important to me, that we can progress that work, and I can think of no one better to be managing that work program. I've already welcomed Richard as chair. I think it's an inspired appointment. He brings a lot of experience, and I think perhaps he'll help us navigate a different pathway for moving forward, especially on those issues of trust. But I did want to speak to Wayne Donnelly briefly, because I'm aware that we do need to have a governing body meeting shortly. Wayne, I have known probably for the last 35, 40 years. He's an exceptional man. He's had an exceptional career in both the public and the private sector. You know, if I look back on those things that he was able to achieve in Green and McCarhill and in the private sector, and then, I mean, the impressive amount of appointments that he has held in the public sector. He's, you know, whether it's civil engineering, contracting, transport in general, to all of those, he's just brought this quiet wisdom and experience to every setting. He has tried to link up, you know, the culture within the private sector with government. And what I've noticed always is just the absolute respect from everybody who works around him. He's approachable, he's got deep personal values, and he really has understood the importance of accountability. I, for one, will really miss his calm, unflappable input. I realise that he has given dedicated service to Auckland at a time when it's been quite difficult for him because of his personal situation. So it really is important to me that it's not just to Auckland that he has given great public service. I think it's to the people of New Zealand. And so with that, I'm very pleased to see B being put in place, that we do acknowledge formally his many years of service to Auckland Transport and also the City of Auckland. And I'd like to add
ago. And even, I think, 18 months ago, we had a conversation about the variation to the regional fuel tax and the projects. We had a conversation and we made the decisions. And then we spoke to government and there was a joint decision on the implementation of the fuel tax and the variation of the fuel tax. So the Mayor, in your comment, I would like to know what conversation there has been by government with Auckland on the extinguishing of the regional fuel tax. I'm a governor in the city and I haven't been party to any conversation on the future of funding transport. So as I see it at the moment, the funding gap, which we knew was quite significant in transport, has just got way, way bigger. And there are a whole host of projects and 14 investment categories that are now at risk. One of the biggest is the Eastern Busway. That is the Reeves Road flyover, Tarako Busway, and the Botany Bus Station. Those three projects making up the Eastern Busway are probably one of the single biggest beneficiaries of the regional fuel tax. Is that project now at risk? Are the bus priority improvements at risk? City centre bus infrastructure, improving airport access, park and rides, the list goes on and on. Now, I'm actually quite concerned because I'm in an absolute vacuum as to how these projects are going to be carried on. We have no indication whatsoever, let alone the safety, and that's a big one as well. So has this decision been made in discussion with Auckland, the Mayor and the Council? Hands up for saying it has been. No.
Okay, so after the Mayor's address, we'll break for lunch. Heroic attempts to get before lunch have failed. And so apologies to the water care, the personnel will take you after lunch. Mr. Mayor, over to you.
Okay, thanks for that. Before I get just onto that other bit, in responding to Auckland Transport's presentation from the Chair and the Chief Executive and his team, thanks for that. We welcome the progress on rolling out dynamic lanes, bus transponders and other works, but we'd like to see a more ambitious plan. I mean, pressure has worked this year on everything. Pressure has worked on Port. They're now making money. They never used to. And the pressure is going to go up. The pressure will stay on for you guys. AT need to really get on with time of use charging. You've got the government supporting you. There's a risk that AT not getting the work done quick enough. Pressure on you, Mark. Better, faster, cheaper. I heard a lot of that today. It's quite good. Keep it up. I welcome the $15 million on savings and contractors and other internal costs with dealing with the time of the temporary traffic management. In fact, that we're not using the recommended procedures because they're just too expensive. Keep it up, what you're doing. We need to get the costs down to what the private sector rates would be. I want to see more setting of unrealistically tight prime frames and achieving them. No blowouts, just going better. And the Auckland Integrated Transport Plan is ours. There will be quite some government tension on this. I've already heard one of our councillors today supporting a road which is not in our version of the Integrated Transport Plan, but it is in the National Party's version of it. Today, we have at 12 o'clock received the cancellation of the regional fuel tax. It's an announcement that was made by the government that promised to make it, but it will have unintended consequences unless the government's prepared to foot the bill for upcoming transport projects. There will only be enough money to complete stage 3 of the Eastern Busway, which does include the Reeves Road flyover, but not stage 4, and buy some of the electric trains for the CRL. We have to have the trains. It's completely dumb to spend $5 billion on a railway with no trains on it. We've got no choice but to stop work on everything else funded by the regional fuel tax to see how we can fund them. As far as the discussions, this was the discussion from the minister, is that this was in their electorate plan to get elected, and they are the government, they're entitled to do that. He pointed out it was in their thing. It didn't. I pointed out that whilst they consulted and stated they would stop the regional fuel tax, they didn't actually consult on stopping the regional fuel tax and putting up interest rates. When we polled Aucklanders, 44% of them said keep the RFT, only 22% wanted to put up rates. So I'm not keen on putting up rates. RFT-funded projects that could be cancelled include Glenvar Road and Lake Road, as well as the final stage at the Eastern Busway and the proposed airport to Botany Busway. I'm determined to keep rates under control. I'm simply not prepared to pass the cost of these projects on to struggling Auckland households. At a time when they're saying we're doing this to save you money, that doesn't mean just that the government will save you money in order for the council to take it back off you. I've already proposed cutting spending on cycleways by $140 million and raise pedestrian crossings by $80 million in our long-term plan. So those and I'm quite happy to talk with the government about what else we can cut. I am pleased that the government are working to implement the time of use charging, so we need to be ready. But this is not actually a revenue driven, this is demand management. And so there are a lot of unfinished symphonies here. We will have time to discuss over the next round of your meetings what the direct implications of this are. But this is a situation that the government has promised to remove that tax, but have not actually dealt with the unintended consequences of that. There's no sense just giving people money back if we've got to take it away somewhere else. I'm not going to put up rates just to solve somebody else's problem. And when I say I believe we'll have the council's support in that. We have our LTP to come. It's not just a problem that can be solved just by making cuts. Every Aucklander agrees our transport system is a mess and it's going to cost a lot of money to fix it. And it's got to come from somewhere. The government's just made it a bit harder. That's what I'd like to end with today. In half an hour's time, we'll reconvene and discuss the blowout on the sewerage.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We will break for lunch now. We have got one more item, the water care update. So we'll have half an hour. So back at 20 to 2. There's a motion moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. See you in 30 minutes' time, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, John.